Hey Memorial Youth, it has been a crazy year with all new things and new ways of doing old things. And that's one of the reasons we started this podcast. We are so excited to get to be in person for youth group again and to see you at different events. And because of that, this will be our last podcast for a while.
We wanted to finish off the podcast with the big 5-0, our 50th episode. Thanks so much for studying the Bible with us throughout this last year. These 50 episodes, it's been so much fun, but we're excited to do this kind of thing even more with you in person now.
Now, let's get to our 50th episode. Welcome to episode 50! Bow, wow, wow! 5-0! This is Memorial Youth Podcast. They said we would never get here no matter what, that we would quit before episode 50. And let me tell you, we did not quit until episode 50. Just know that it has been an awesome time. This is your host, Landon, and my co-host, Christina.
Hey, guys.
A reminder that the purpose of this podcast is to grow alongside you each week as we look into Scripture and have a little fun while we're at it. All right, Christina, this is the big 5-0. What is our game we have for us today?
All right, the last game of this section of our podcast is Sunday Funday.
Sunday Funday!
Okay, so now that we're not going to be sharing a podcast each Sunday, at least for now, you're going to have like an extra 15 minutes in your week.
That's true.
What in the world are you going to do?
What are you going to do?
We're going to help you out a little bit. So this is a Would You Rather on a Sunday Funday. So the first one is listen to worship music or watch a cool video about the Bible.
Listen to worship music.
Me too. I love worship music. Would you rather go to an early church service and have all day to chill or sleep in and go to the late service?
Sleep in, late service. Come on.
I think I want to go to the early service.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Would you rather have a big home-cooked lunch or grab fast food for lunch?
Fast food all
Fast
day,
food.
every day.
Panda Express, anyone?
Oh.
I love Panda Express on Sundays. Would you rather take a Sunday afternoon nap or go for a Sunday afternoon hike?
Nap.
Yeah, I'm a big Sunday napper. I like, just a 30-minute little power nap, All right, the last one. Would you rather have a Sunday movie marathon or hang out by the pool on a Sunday afternoon?
Pool. Swimming it up.
Yeah, I think pool. Unless I'm a really sleepy day, I want to take a little nappy, watch some movies. So it kind of depends for me. So let us know, what are you guys going to do on your Sunday fun day? How are you guys going to continue to be in the Word, like worship God, learn about stuff, but also like enjoy your Sabbath and relax and kind of rejuvenate for your week?
Sunday fun day,
Sunday
y'all.
fun day. All right, now let's get into our 50th episode, Scripture.
All right, this week as we continue our series, A Walk Through the Bible, I want to remind you of what this series has been about and what we've been doing. The Bible's made up of 66 different books, and yet all of these books collectively tell one story about God's love and redemption of humanity through Jesus. We have been exploring that story. God created the world perfect and good, and sin entered our lives and this world, and it broke it. But God has a plan to bring redemption for all of us, and He operates this plan through His people. We've studied people along that plan: Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, Joshua, the Judges, Ruth, and most recently we started talking about the prophet Samuel, the first king Saul, and the next king David. Things started off well for Saul, but things got pretty bad pretty quick. And so God told Samuel to tell the next king to get prepared. And that king was David. And here's the thing. Even though he was told he was going to be king, he was still a shepherd boy. He was still working the farm with his family. And that's where our story picks up today. And the thing is, I'm going to have to tell like a little bit of background for this story before we jump into our scripture. But the thing about this is it's one of my favorite stories. So let's just jump in. And where we find David is working the field. He is a farm boy. He's a shepherd. He takes care of sheep.
He's young too, right?
Yeah, he's around 14, 15 at this time. He's the youngest brother in his family, and so we find him there, and he's talking to his dad, and his dad says this to him: "Son, I haven't heard from your 3 oldest brothers yet because they're off fighting this war, and pause with David, and we're going to jump over to his older brothers in this war. There's these two armies camped out on the opposite sides of this big valley. So on one side, we have the Israelites led by King Saul, and they're like, soldiers. And then there's this big, huge, like, valley. And then on the other side camped out are the Philistines. They're like the arch enemies, the like rivals of the Israelites. And they've kind of been fighting a little bit, but right now there's kind of this like weird truce. But every single day from the Philistine side, there's this guy come down named Goliath. And Goliath yells out to the Israelite army, send one guy down here to fight me. If he beats me, you guys win. And he would just go down and he would taunt them. And everybody in the Israelite army heard that this Philistine was like trash talking them and said like, hey, send one guy down to fight me. And they never would send anybody down.
He was big and scary.
He was big, he was scary, he was a tough warrior, okay? And everybody on the Israelite side was scared of him and they wouldn't fight him. Back to David and his dad. So David's dad is worried about his brothers, and so he's going to send David to go check on them while they're at war. And so David says, yeah, sure, Dad. I'll take them these supplies, check in on them, make sure they're okay. So David makes the journey to the Israelite camp. And while he's at the Israelite camp talking to his brothers, giving them the supplies, he hears this Philistine giant. And that giant Goliath is walking down like he does every day, threatening the Israelite army, trash-talking them, trash-talking God, talking bad about God and Israel and his people and all kinds of stuff like that. And David is like, whoa, why is nobody going to fight this guy? And then David even finds out that there's a reward. So King Saul had wanted someone to go fight this giant. But during that time, no one would take it up. And so King Saul kept adding like rewards. He said, okay, if you beat this giant, I'm going to give you a bunch of money. Well, if that's not enough, I'm going to make you a general. If that's not enough, I'm going to let you marry my daughter, and you will be a prince of Israel if you beat this guy. And still nobody would go forward to fight him. They were all scared. And David hears about this, and he's like, this is not right. Somebody should stand up to this guy who is talking trash to God's armies, who's talking trash about God. And so David says, you know what? I'm going to go fight him. David's brothers are like, no, you cannot do that. But David's like, look, this guy's talking bad about God. God's going to take care of me. And so I'm going to go fight him. And Saul hears that someone in his army has finally said, yes, I'll fight this Philistine. And so Saul calls this guy David up to him, and that's where our scripture picks up.
This comes from 1 Samuel 17:32 through 50. Don't worry about this Philistine, David told Saul. I'll go fight him. Don't be ridiculous, Saul replied. There's no way you can fight this Philistine and possibly win. You're only a boy, and he's been a man of war since his youth. But David persisted. I've been taking care of my father's sheep and goats, he said. When a lion or a bear comes to steal a lamb from the flock, I go after it with a club and rescue the lamb from its mouth. If the animal turns on me, I catch it by the jaw and club it to death. I have done this to both lions and bears, and I'll do it to this pagan Philistine too, for he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the claws of the lion and the bear will rescue me from this Philistine. Saul finally consented. All right, go ahead, he said, and may the Lord be with you. Then Saul gave David his own armor, a bronze helmet and a coat of mail. David put it on, strapped the sword over it, and took a step or two to see what it was like, for he had never worn such things before. I can't go in these, he protested to Saul. I'm not used to them. So David took them off again. He picked up 5 smooth stones from a stream and put them in a shepherd's bag. Then, armed only with his shepherd's staff and sling, he started across the valley to fight the Philistine. Goliath walked out toward David with his shield bearer ahead of him, sneering in contempt at this ruddy-faced boy. Am I a dog, he roared at David, that you come at me with a stick? And he cursed David by the names of his gods. Come over here, and I'll give your flesh to the birds and wild animals, Goliath yelled. David replied to the Philistine, You come to me with sword, spear, and javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of heaven's armies, the God of armies of Israel, whom you have defied. Today the Lord will conquer you, and I will kill you and cut off your head. And then I will give the dead bodies of your men to the birds and wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. And everyone assembled here will know that the Lord rescues his people, but not with sword and spear. This is the Lord's battle, and he will give you to us." As Goliath moved closer to the attack, David quickly ran out to meet him. Reaching into his shepherd's bag and taking out a stone, he hurled it with his sling and hit the Philistine in the forehead. The stone sank in, and Goliath stumbled and fell face down on the ground. So David triumphed over the Philistine with only a sling and stone, for he had no sword.
So we have this awesome story of David versus Goliath. And I think there's a lot of lessons we can learn from David here. Number one is this: doing the right thing is sometimes scary. I mean, look at what David had in front of him. He had this huge giant, this veteran, this person who's probably killed tons and tons of men, who's like just yelling thing, who's scary, who's big and strong, who's different. And like, it would have been frightening for David to step up. It would have been scary for him to do the right thing. This mean and nasty man in front of him. And yet, even though it's scary, right? David does the right thing, even though it's scary.
Yeah, and sometimes doing what is right in our life is scary, like saying no to peer pressure, or standing up for people who are bullied, reaching out to those who are hurting. Like, sometimes those things are scary. Sometimes you kind of get like nervous, like butterflies, but like that's just like how it is. It was how it was for David. It's how it is for us in life. Some things are just scary.
Yep. And the second lesson kind of goes along with this, is not everyone we think should be doing the right thing is going to be doing the right thing. And what I mean by that is, not only was it like scary to face this giant, there's like a huge army behind David, right? Who is not doing the right thing, who will not step up and fight him, who will not trust God, who will not have courage to step and face this giant. And so sometimes it's going to be really hard to do the right thing, and especially when we're by ourselves, when people we know and our friends aren't doing the right thing, we still are called to do the right thing.
Yeah, and because it's hard doing it alone, we need friends. Like, we need a community, we need our family around us who are doing what is right too, and who will encourage us and who will love us through doing these hard things. That's why, like, it's really important for us to try to surround ourselves with those people, and knowing all along, even if we are feeling alone, that God is always with us too.
And wouldn't it have been awesome if just like one person in the Israelite crowd would have just cheered and said, "Go, David!" Like
his brothers, his three
brothers.
Right,
like they're all scared. They're all like, for sure, David's going to die here. And not one person is like showing him encouragement and support. Yeah. But wouldn't it have been awesome if just one of them would have just called out and said, "Go, David, you've got this." Right? Yeah. We need people like that with us.
And we need to be those people who encourage those around us too.
Absolutely. The third lesson we see from David, and this one's really important, is God is going to take care of us. David knows that no matter what happens, whether he loses this battle, whether he wins, that God is going to take care of him. He's going to take care of Israel. He trusts that even no matter the circumstance, God will take care of him. And I think that's really important for us, right?
Yeah, like God takes care of us no matter what, just same as David. And this doesn't mean everything good is going to happen in our lives or everything's going to work out perfectly, but God is there with us always, no matter what we're going through.
The fourth important lesson we learn from David is this, is God has given us unique gifts and passions to tackle the giants in our life. God prepared David for the fight. David could have gone out there with a sword and a shield and some armor, but he puts it on and he's like, this doesn't feel right. God hasn't prepared me for these tools. Instead, he takes off the armor, puts the sword down, goes down to the river and gets 5 stones and his sling that he uses as a shepherd. And that's what he goes out there with. And I think it's important that those are the gifts that God had given him and prepared him to use, and he uses those.
Yeah, and just like David, God has given you special gifts and talents and passions that you can use to serve him, to love the people around you, and to also just enjoy life. Like, he's given you those things for this life, and that we can use for God. And
the giants we face like in this life aren't like literal giants. So we're not like fighting like a war, but instead it's things like injustice, racial inequality. It's things like bullying. It's things like poverty. We can use our gifts, our talents, our passions that God has given us to fight back against the evil things in this world, the unfair things in this world, and to serve the people around us.
Right.
Finally, this last lesson I think we have from David is this: God has an amazing plan for you. God uses this kid to battle this giant and win, and to teach Israel a lesson. And this story has been kept in the Bible and with God's people for thousands of years. God had this amazing moment for David, and he had more amazing moments that come in his life. And that tells us that God had an amazing plan for David. And if God has an amazing plan for David, he has an amazing plan for you.
Yeah, God has amazing plans for you. We encourage you to trust him and follow him and ask him to lead you to those amazing plans he has for you. We know it, we see that in your life, and we want you to trust in him and let him lead you to those plans.
Absolutely. And one of the ways he leads us and guides us into that amazing plan is through Scripture. It's through his word. And that's why we made this podcast. That's why we've done this podcast. And what I want to remind you is that just because our podcast is kind of stopping for now, you can still read the Bible. You can still study the Bible. And if you have questions, if you get stuck, you can message me. You can message Christina. You can talk to your parents. You can talk to a pastor. Find somebody, talk about it, but continue to seek God in his word. Thank you for joining us this week on Memorial Youth Podcast. It's been a pleasure to kind of go through this journey with you through the Bible. I want to encourage you to continue to read that Bible and to seek God through his word. Remember, you are loved by God and you're loved by us. See ya. Wow.
That's a wrap.
That's a wrap.